Hello there, and today we are going to be analyzing the role of terrorism in 20th century conflicts, specifically in the Middle East. One of the things that comes up a lot in the discussion about terrorism in the Middle East is the role of Islam as a political motivator for violence, and certainly religion does factor in here. Remember that Islam reached its peak as a faith in the 14th century, but by the 20th century, Islamic empires were struggling to cope with Western modernization. Imperial control of the Middle East and the introduction of Western-style secular education left huge divisions between Western-educated elites and more traditional people who resented imperial control. Fundamentalist groups formed in response to this influx of secular Western ideals, which were believed to threaten the existence of Islam. These groups used this rationale to justify the use of violence in defense of their religion. But it is important to remember that there isn't anything inherently violent about Islam. In fact, many argue that religious rhetoric provides a convenient logic for what is really a political struggle in the grand scheme of things. Take, for example, the Iranian hostage crisis. The situation was apparently instigated by fundamentalist revolutionaries in the name of their religion. But as scholar Martha Crenshaw put it, although Iran explained its actions in terms of religious principles, the original reason for the seizure of the American embassy in Tehran was not new. It was a reaction to American support for the Shah's autocratic regime, and not only that for the Shah himself, whose admission to the U.S. for medical treatment precipitated the embassy takeover. Regardless of motivation, the use of terrorist tactics has changed the dynamic of global conflicts in both the Middle East and abroad. Like before the 20th century, wars were fought between states in order to gain territory or control resources. But since terror groups aren't really states, states can't really declare war on terror groups with much significance. This makes it pretty hard to use conventional warfare techniques to take down terror groups. Also, the significance of the threat of terrorism goes beyond the damage that guns and explosives can create. Terrorism has given rise to more subversive tactics when it comes to creating chaos within a nation, like cyber-terrorism, which can devastate the economies of entire nations, or nuclear terrorism. Nuclear terror is especially worrisome because terrorists tend to care more for their cause than their own life. Like when the Soviets and the US both had nuclear weapons, no one actually used them because they both knew that firing their nukes would lead to retaliation from the other side with nukes, and everyone would be destroyed. But if terrorists have nukes, they won't care if they die as long as it's for their cause, so they may be more inclined to use nuclear warheads. But while all this seems pretty scary, the best way to cope with this kind of threat is to understand the instigators and their motivations. The day that we can understand what drives terrorists to commit acts of terror is the day we can begin to tackle the threat. Thanks for watching.
Created using Powtoon.